Stop what you're doing right now. Close that other browser tab. Put your phone on silent. Because what I am about to reveal to you in the next few minutes is not speculation. It is not a theory. It is a documented fact that 19 major financial institutions are sitting on positions they mathematically cannot cover. And the rule change that just went into effect 72 hours ago has turned their problem into your opportunity. But only if you understand what is happening before the mainstream media spins this into something it is not. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Jason, your Asian guy. Before I expose all this data, drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. I would love to know where our community is tuning in from around the world. For the past 11 days, my secure inbox has been flooded with messages. I'm talking about emails from floor traders in Chicago, messages from compliance officers in London, even a handful of risk managers who refuse to give their real names, but who are telling me the same story from 3 different continents. The COMEX, the largest metals exchange in the Western world, just changed the margin requirements for silver futures. And they did not do it to protect you. They did it to protect themselves. Let me be very clear about what a margin requirement actually is. When you trade a futures contract, you do not pay the full price of the metal up front. You put down a deposit. That deposit is called margin. It is collateral. It is the money the exchange holds to make sure you can cover your bet if the price moves against you. For years, the margin requirement on a single silver contract, which represents 5,000 ounces, sat at around $8,000. That number was stable. It was predictable. Traders built their strategies around it. But on December 28, 2025, the COMEX did something they have only done a handful of times in history. They raised the margin requirement by 31%, overnight, no warning, no grace period. The new requirement jumped from $8,000 to $10,500 per contract. Now, to the average person watching this, that might sound like a boring administrative tweak. It might sound like the kind of thing that only affects Wall Street insiders. But you need to understand the physics of what just happened. There are 19 banks and trading houses that hold massive short positions in silver. I'm not talking about small speculative bets. I'm talking about positions so large that they represent months of global mining production. These banks sold silver that they do not own. They made promises to deliver metal that they do not have in their vaults. And they were able to maintain these positions because the margin requirement was low enough that they could afford to keep rolling their contracts forward month after month, year after year, waiting for the price to collapse so they could close their shorts at a profit. But the price did not collapse. Silver went from $30 an ounce to $80 an ounce in less than 12 months. And every single dollar that silver climbs costs these institutions billions in unrealized losses. The only reason they have not been forced to cover yet is that they had enough margin in their accounts to meet the daily settlement requirements. But that was when the margin was $8,000 per contract. Now it is $10,500. And that difference, that $2,500 increase per contract, just became a nuclear bomb. Let me show you the math, because this is where the lie falls apart. If a bank is short 10,000 contracts, which is not unusual for the major players, it was required to hold $80 million in margin under the old rules. Under the new rules, they need to hold $105 million. That is a $25 million margin call that hit their accounts this week. But it gets worse, because these banks are not just short 10,000 contracts. Some of them are short 50,000 contracts, some are short 100,000 contracts. The total short interest held by these 19 institutions is estimated to be north of 450,000 contracts. Do the calculation. 450,000 contracts times $2,500 per contract. An additional margin requirement equals $1.1 billion. $1.1 billion in fresh capital that these banks had to inject into their margin accounts in the first week of January. And where does that money come from? It does not appear out of thin air. It comes from selling other assets. It comes from closing profitable positions in other markets. It comes from emergency credit lines. And if they cannot raise the cash, they have only one option left. They have to start closing their silver shorts. But here's the trap. If they try to close their shorts by buying back the contracts they sold, they drive the price higher. And if the price goes higher, their remaining short positions lose even more money, which triggers more margin calls, which forces them to buy even more contracts. It is a feedback loop. It is a death spiral. And the COMEX knows it. The exchange knows that by raising the margin requirement right now, at this exact moment in the market cycle, they are putting a gun to the head of their own members. So why would they do it? Why would the COMEX, an institution that exists to facilitate smooth trading and provide liquidity, suddenly make a rule change that threatens to blow up its biggest clients? There are only 2 possible explanations. Either they are trying to prevent a systemic collapse by forcing the banks to reduce their risk before it is too late, or they are trying to trigger a controlled implosion that allows the smart money to exit before the dumb money realizes what is happening. Either way, you need to understand that this rule change is not neutral. It is not procedural. It is a weapon. and it just got fired. The question you should be asking yourself right now is this. If the biggest trading institutions in the world are scrambling to meet margin calls, if they are being forced to either inject billions in cash or start covering their shorts, what does that mean for the price of silver over the next 30 days? What does it mean when the sellers become buyers? What does it mean when the short squeeze that everyone has been talking about for years finally starts to actually happen? We need to dig deeper. We need to look at who these 19 banks are and what they are doing right now to survive. You need to understand who we are actually talking about here. These are not small retail traders. These are not inexperienced speculators who got caught on the wrong side of a momentum trade. The 19 institutions that are trapped in this margin crisis are some of the most powerful names in global finance. We are talking about JP Morgan Chase. We are talking about HSBC. We are talking about Goldman Sachs, Scotiabank, and Bank of America. These are the same banks that have been fined hundreds of millions of dollars over the past decade for manipulating precious metals markets. In 2020, JP Morgan paid $920 million to settle charges that they spoofed the gold and silver markets for nearly a decade. In 2018, Deutsche Bank admitted to rigging gold and silver prices and paid settlement fees. In 2016, Barclays was caught manipulating gold benchmarks. This is not ancient history. This is the recent track record of the exact institutions that are now sitting on these massive underwater short positions. And you're supposed to believe that this time they learned their lesson. This time they are playing fair. Let me tell you what is actually happening right now behind the scenes. Sources inside the trading community are reporting that at least 4 of these banks have already begun quietly unwinding portions of their short positions. They are buying back contracts in the overnight session when volume is thin and price impact is minimized. They are using algorithmic trading systems to spread their buy orders across multiple exchanges to avoid detection. They are doing everything in their power to cover their shorts without alerting the market that they are in distress. Because the moment the market smells blood, the feeding frenzy begins. But they cannot hide forever. The data is starting to leak out. The COMEX publishes a report every week called the Commitment of Traders Report. It shows the aggregate positions held by different categories of market participants. And the most recent report, published on January 3rd, showed something shocking. The commercial short position, which is the category that includes these big banks, dropped by 18,000 contracts in a single week. 18,000 contracts. That is 90 million ounces of silver. That is not normal profit taking. That is not a routine position adjustment. That is panic covering. And here's the key detail that most people are missing. That report only covers data through December 31st. It does not include the chaos that happened after the margin hike went into effect on December 28th. It does not capture the emergency buying that took place in the first week of January when these banks had to scramble to meet their new margin obligations. We will not see that data until the next report comes out. But the insiders already know. The floor traders already see the order flow. And they are telling me that the buying pressure from short covering is only getting started. Now, let me explain why this is different from every other time the silver bugs claimed a short squeeze was coming. For years, people have been saying that the big banks were trapped. For years, people have been predicting that the shorts would be forced to cover and the price would explode to the moon. And for years, nothing happened. The banks kept rolling their positions. The price stayed suppressed. The squeeze never came. So why should you believe it is different this time? This time, there is a hard deadline. In the past, the banks could wait out the pressure. They could absorb the paper losses and hold their positions until sentiment shifted and the price came back down. But the margin hike changed the rules of the game. Now they have a choice. Either they post billions in additional collateral every single month, or they close the position. There is no third option. The exchange will not let them trade on a thin margin anymore. The days of leverage and yuan rolling forever are over. And the timing could not be worse for them. Because while they are being forced to cover, physical demand is exploding. Solar panel manufacturers are consuming silver at record rates. Electric vehicle production is ramping up. Industrial users are stockpiling because they see the same supply shortage that we see. And on top of all of that, you have China. You have the Shanghai exchange trading at a $7 premium over New York. You have arbitrage traders buying every single ounce that gets sold in the West and shipping it to the East, where buyers are standing in line with cash in hand. So the banks are caught in a perfect storm. They are being squeezed from above by margin requirements. They are being squeezed from below by physical demand. And they are being squeezed from the side by a rule change that gives them no escape hatch. The only question left is how long they can hold out before the dam breaks. And the answer to that question is going to determine whether silver goes to $100 or $150 in the next 6 months. We need to look at the timeline. We need to look at what happens next if these banks cannot raise the capital they need. Here's what happens next. And I need you to pay very close attention because this is the part where theory becomes reality. The margin call deadline does not go away. Every single day that silver stays above $75, these 19 banks have to mark their positions to market. That means they have to calculate their losses based on the current price. And every single day that the price stays elevated, their margin requirements stay elevated. They cannot wait this out. They cannot kick the can down the road anymore. The COMEX gives traders until the close of business to meet margin calls. If you do not have enough money in your account by the end of the trading day, the exchange has the legal authority to liquidate your position. They will forcibly close your contracts. They will buy back your shorts at whatever the market price is, and they will send you the bill for the difference. This is not a suggestion. This is not negotiable. It is written into the rule book, and it applies to everyone, even JP Morgan, even Goldman Sachs. Now, these banks are not going to let it get to that point. They're not going to sit around and wait for the exchange to liquidate them like some amateur day trader who forgot to fund his account. They are going to do everything in their power to close their positions on their own terms. But here is the problem. When you're short 450,000 contracts and you need to buy back even 10% of that position, you are talking about buying 45,000 contracts. That is 225 million ounces of silver. And you cannot do that quietly. The market will see it. The algorithms will detect it. The other traders will smell the blood in the water and they will start front-running your orders. They will buy ahead of you, knowing that you are a forced buyer. They will drive the price higher. And the higher the price goes, the more expensive it becomes for you to close the rest of your position. This is the mechanics of a short squeeze. It is not some mystical event. It is simple supply and demand physics applied to a market where the shorts are trapped. And we are already seeing the early signs. Silver has not dropped below $72 in the past 9 days. Every single dip gets bought immediately. Every single pullback finds a floor of aggressive buyers. The market is not behaving as it did in 2020 or 2021, when you could see violent shakeouts and long periods of consolidation. This market is holding its ground. It is refusing to give the shorts any relief. And that tells you everything you need to know about who is in control right now. The bulls are in control, the physical buyers are in control, and the shorts are on defense. They are playing not to lose instead of playing to win. And in markets, when you are playing defense, you have already lost. You just do not know it yet. The only question is how much damage you are going to take before you admit defeat. Some of these banks will cover early. They will take their losses and move on. But some of them are going to hold out. They are going to pray for a miracle. They are going to hope that some external event crashes the market and bails them out. But what event is going to do that? What is going to make industrial users stop buying silver? What is going to make China stop arbitrageur, the spread between New York and Shanghai? What is going to make solar panel manufacturers cancel their orders? There's no catalyst for a collapse. The fundamentals are rock solid. The supply deficit is real. The inventories are draining. And now on top of all of that, you have a margin crisis that is forcing the biggest short sellers in the market to become buyers. So here is what you need to do. If you are holding physical silver, do not sell it. Do not let short-term volatility shake you out of your position. Understand that any dip you see in the next 30 days is probably a bank trying to cover without moving the market too much. They are going to try to push the price down in the overnight session. They are going to try to trigger stop losses. They're going to use every trick in the book to create the illusion of weakness. But it is not a real weakness. It is desperation. If you are thinking about buying, this is your window. Because once these banks finish covering, once the margin crisis is resolved and the weak hands are flushed out, nothing is standing between the current price and triple digits. The path is clear. The shorts will be gone. The momentum will shift. And the only thing left will be buyers chasing a market that has no sellers. That is when silver goes parabolic. That is when we see the kind of move that only happens once every 20 years. The COMEX just handed you a gift. They changed the rules in a way that forces the manipulators to cover their positions. They turned the market structure against the very banks that have been suppressing prices for over a decade. And now those banks are bleeding. They are trapped. And they are running out of time. Do not waste this opportunity. Do not let fear talk you out of the trade of the decade. The margin crisis is confirmed. The squeeze is live. And the only question left is whether you're going to be on the right side of history when this thing finally breaks wide open. So ask yourself this. If 19 of the most powerful banks in the world are scrambling to cover positions they can no longer afford to hold, what does that tell you about where the price is headed next? So here's my final instruction to you for the next 30 days. When you see the price dip, do not panic. When you see red candles on the chart, do not question your thesis. And when your friends or your broker or some talking head on CNBC tells you that silver is overextended and due for a correction, smile and nod. Because you know something they do not know. You know that 19 banks are trapped. You know that the margin requirements just put a gun to their head. And you know that every single day they hold those short positions bleeds them dry. Do not be the liquidity they desperately need. Do not sell your physical metal to give them an exit. Do not close your positions because you are scared of a $5 pullback. Have the discipline to see past the noise. Have the conviction to hold through the manipulation. Because in 6 months, when silver is trading north of $120, you will not remember the fear you felt today. You will only remember that you did not let them steal your position at the bottom. This is not just a trade anymore. This is a transfer of wealth. This is the moment when the patient and the informed take money directly from the hands of the arrogant and the overleveraged. Be patient. Be informed. Be the immovable object that breaks their game. The margin crisis is real. The countdown has started, and the banks are praying you do not figure it out before it is too late. This is one of the hottest topics in commodities right now. If you found this information valuable, hit that subscribe button so you do not miss the next breakdown like this. All right, investors, stay alert. I will see you in the next one.